So I'm Hayley Coxon. I'm currently the VP of Marketing at Semend. I've spent most of my career working at Salesforce ISVs, and I've been an accidental admin since someone thought it was a good idea to give me admin credentials in 2010. So first, some context. The screenshots you're going to see are real. They are from our live Semend production org, and some of them are laughably bad. Please remember when you start to question if I'm credible enough to give this talk, that I've only been with Semend for 6 weeks, and Salesforce is not actually part of my scope. So why are we here? And I'm assuming you all chose to attend this session over other great content, thank you again, because you have data quality issues in your org. I think it's helpful to take a step back as a collective ecosystem and think about this conversation, because we've been having it for 25 years and kicking the data reliability can down the proverbial road that whole time. We know we should be getting more data out of our Salesforce. 94% of business leaders think they're not getting enough value out of their data. I hate to break it to you, but if your org is more than 3 years old, a quarter of your fields are no longer in use. Now the trick is figuring out which of those are. And an alarming amount of data decay happens every year, according to Dun & Bradstreet. I think the silver lining to all of this is organizations are finally starting to wake up. They're finally a little willing to start tackling this problem in a meaningful way. And if it's not for all of the reasons that we already acknowledged, that having reliable data in Salesforce is generally a very good idea, then it's for AI. Because if you've been to a Salesforce event in the last 2 or so years, you've heard the message, your AI is only as good as the data that you're feeding it, over and over and over again. I also think it's worth questioning, maybe we've been having this conversation the wrong way. Maybe it's not been effective because we haven't been having the right conversation. So I hope to leave you with some new ideas on how to approach this problem differently, because it often feels like we can't see the forest for the trees. And we really do need to build a foundation for a reliable data future. That leads me to stakeholder buy-in and my first set of do's and don'ts. So don't assume that your stakeholders care at all about data quality. My early career was in marketing operations, so this is a passion of mine. I am, incredibly in the weeds in this. But that's not true of most of your stakeholders. And at the end of the day, my biggest worry isn't, is my data quality good? It's, are we going to make the pipeline number so we hit our goals and we continue to run this business? Your sales leaders probably worried about, hey, this forecast, maybe it's not accurate. Am I reporting the right thing to the board? Because that is where their job is on the line. And if you're in CS, you're thinking, which of my big customers might be unhappy and I am going to be completely blindsided when they don't renew? So do align whatever data quality initiative that you're trying to push through your organization to something that your stakeholders care about, an objective that they have. And you're going to need to help them quantify the problem and understand why data quality is a big impact on them getting their objectives met. So help me understand how big the problem is. Hey, did you know we have 133 fields on opportunities that are used in less than 10% of our records? 45 of them have never been used in the entire 7-year history of Semend's org. Of that, 36 are on at least one page layout, but some of them are on multiple. And same with automation. We've got 20 fields that have no data in them powering automation. So it's no wonder our users are frustrated with Salesforce and don't want to use it. And what in the heck is that automation supposed to be doing? Because we had built that assuming there would be data in those fields. So this gives a really quick, easy way to get some quick wins and get some buy-in as you clean up those page layouts, and a really tactical plan of action. But again, make it relevant for me as a leader. Show me why this matters to what I'm trying to achieve. So on the left in white, we have closed won opportunities. In blue, we have closed lost. And the fields that are showing are the fields that are most prevalent when we win and when we lose. Now, the thing to know about Semend's business is that we are a highly complex enterprise solution. You can't buy us by entering your credit card on our website. So I can go to my sales leader and say, hey, I think there might be something wrong with the way we're capturing meeting setting, or maybe the app that we're using to do that has broken that integration. Because how is it possible that we have 70% of the meetings that we're winning where we have no record of ever talking to these people. And we also don't seem to know why the compelling event is driving them to buy. These are questions that are just like, you feel like maybe this is happening, but here's the data to show this is really happening and something we need to address. Conversely, on the close-loss side, good enterprise sales management would say you want to maintain a clean funnel. You want to disqualify out opportunities that are not likely to close. We don't seem to be doing that. We drag it out to the very end of our stages, and we're wasting a lot of company time, a lot of sales time, a lot of effort on things that aren't closing. That's probably a good training opportunity for some sales enablement on how to use our stages more appropriately. You can also use this kind of statistical analysis to build KPIs. One of the questions I hear a lot is, looking at this forecast, which of these opportunities are real and which ones aren't? Well, using the data analysis, you can say, hey, how about we build some sort of scoring on, we know these fields are important to winning these opportunities. If those fields are empty, that's at risk. You can bubble that up into a forecast risk and start to compute on, this is how much expected revenue we have forecasted that might be, questionable. And so as we clean up this tech debt, how do we stop from accumulating more? And that leads us to governance. And this very real request I got a couple of weeks ago. Can we get a type field on tasks? To which I said, you mean in addition to the 7 we already have? And the field values are so many I can't fit them on the screen. Yeah. So it is important that we understand our stakeholders, our users are not going to know our Salesforce configuration as intimately as we do. That's our job. It's also our job to help put some process and framework in place to stop this from happening. So do establish a good governance process around new requests for things. You should be questioning, who's going to be accountable for this? That's your data owner. Why is it needed? Why now? How are we going to get value out of this as a business? Who's going to get that value? Oh, by the way, it looks very similar to this other field we already have, or the other 6 in my case. Maybe we could use one of those. While we're on the topic of capturing all this information, do use the data classification metadata. Do your future self and your future coworkers a favor and start capturing these things. Salesforce rolled out fields for data owner and field usage and sensitivity a few years ago, but I find a lot of people still don't know about them. I am personally currently using them to capture which of my integration users are responsible for fields as part of my integration packages, because we have a lot of garbage in there that we don't use anymore. While we're on the topic of field metadata, also start thinking about your descriptions. Everyone has well-documented orgs, right? If you do, if you're using field descriptions, great. You need to start thinking about how is this going to be relevant for AI? Because this is the #1 most important factor to whether your AI is successful. Because Einstein doesn't know why you made these fields. You need to tell Einstein. So think about how do you make your field descriptions more robust. Document the why that you captured from your intake request, not just the what. And know that Einstein doesn't speak in your company's internal lingo and acronyms and jargon. You need to spell things out and be very literal for Einstein to work well. Within governance, also think about data standardization. And the statistical analysis you can run shows opportunities for, maybe we can make these things pickless. This is an example of field. It was just the first I found in my org. It might not be the best because it is part of a managed package, but it shows the field distribution of the field writs, and you can see we're using the same values in a string field all the time. If we turn this into a pick list instead, that's a great opportunity to ensure you have that data standardization and just improve things overall. Architecture is also a very big part of data governance strategy. If your data is not well architected and well managed in your system of record, which for many of us is Salesforce, then it's not going to be reliable downstream. It's not going to be well managed downstream. So it's important to understand the full life cycle of your data. How is it gathered? How are you maintaining it? How do your users use it? Is it controlled for security and compliance purposes? But also, how are you archiving it? What data is necessary to retain in Salesforce and what data you need to retain, but maybe it doesn't need to be in Salesforce. I think historically we've probably taken the easy route of saying, like, if it's only needed for compliance, we can ship that off to somewhere that is more cost effective to store. And that's certainly, a valid statement. But we need to start thinking about how and what data do we need for AI initiatives that we're starting to use and want to use, because that could change those decisions and those conversations. So you do need to consider factors like usage frequency and how often your users need to access the data. But you also need to start thinking about what do we need for data to compute for our predictive models? What do we want to train our generative AI on so that our prompt responses are really high quality? And of course, compliance is a definite still part of that strategy conversation. So finally, maintaining data reliability. Now that we've cleaned up a lot of the data decay, a lot of the data debt, how do we make sure we don't continue this cycle? And adoption and monitoring are really important to this end. So don't assume that if you make something, they're going to use it. This is an example. We're rolling out a new ABM program in my team. So I made a new field on contact. It's not rolled out yet. This is totally expected. I don't expect anyone to put data in there because we haven't trained them on it yet. But over the next few months, as we roll out this program and start it working, I do expect the pattern to change. Within a few weeks, I expect to see some level of data entry as our reps and sellers go through and disqualify contacts and accounts that are not relevant to the program, or we had a conversation and it's just not the right fit right now. That's fine. Within a quarter, that's kind of the timeline of this program, I would expect maybe 50%, maybe more would be disqualified. These are normal patterns, and you can spec them and scope them to the specific context of why we're using this data. This isn't relevant at all to my lead records or contacts that aren't part of my ABM program. I can define those parameters and monitor for just those scenarios. If it's something where we only expect this field to be used in certain record types, you can monitor for just that so that you're getting a real accurate view of adoption and usage, because low field population across your entire org is not necessarily bad if it's only supposed to be for a certain record type, right? I think the final thing, if you take anything away, is the most important best practice is to start. Tackling an object or a field goes to improving reliability. Having these conversations in a different way with your stakeholders starts to change the culture of data quality and reliability in your organization. Just start. Pick something. It could be small. It could be big. Just start. I do also want to leave you with some resources. So there is a global Trailblazer community. That's the link to join it. It's called Data Matters. I think they have about a monthly-ish webinar series that they host around the world for whoever can attend. They've had Salesforce's own internal data strategy team as speakers, presenting on how they're tackling the same challenges at a much larger scale in Org 62. And then there are apps on the App Exchange to help do this analysis for you. Look for data profiling apps on the App Exchange. Everything I used was based on Cuneiform for CRM. That's what the Salesforce internal team uses. But there are others. I like this one because it's current, it's maintained, and it's free. I did use some of their paid free trial app stuff for some of the more complex things, but it's really easy and approachable to start getting a view of the size and problem of data quality in your org. So I believe we have lots of time for questions, if there are any. That's me on LinkedIn if you want to connect. Yeah, we got any questions?
How does AI look at the API information on the fields?
So what I've been told from Salesforce product team presentations is that it looks at the field name, but most importantly, field description. So it's reading that information to understand the context of why that field exists in your org, what it's used for, what data it's gathering, so that it understands how to look at that field's data across your org. Is that helpful? We got one in the back.
Yeah, so for things like metadata, custom settings, things that aren't just like object records, like can you do these similar activities, or is there not anything really to support that kind of analysis of metadata at the moment in terms of, like people set up a whole metadata object just to do a specific thing? You can't really track it the same way, or is that still possible?
You talking about, what are they called? Like custom metadata and setup?
Or like custom settings or labels or any of the other stuff you can do in the admin side.
That is not something I've tried to explore. I know there are tons of apps that look at metadata analysis. Cuneiform, the one I use, looks at metadata and data in context, like together, but I've never tried to use those. If you're using those things, absolutely, because those things are also powering apps and integrations and automation potentially. And same deal, if you don't have the data you expect to see when you're building these solutions, they're not going to work very well.
Do you have any advice on, as you said, some leadership does not believe in data management or data quality, on how to convince them that it's important, especially if they don't believe third-party experts or evidence?
They don't believe evidence.
No.
So how do you talk to an irrational executive about data quality? They've been burned by something in your org and a data reliability issue. I would start maybe there, like, hey, this really unpleasant thing just happened. You look like an idiot in front of the executive team, or we reported things that we then had to roll back to the board. How about we start to put some guardrails in place for that? Give them a sense of like, hey, you might be venturing into this same situation again. You do board quarterly readouts every quarter. So like maybe it's through, we're just gonna proactively put an opportunity score on these things, and maybe some of your sales managers will start asking, hey, what's this? That doesn't look great. That's probably how I would try to approach those conversations. Hold on.
From a marketing and data perspective, both, how do you recommend approaching? I have a client that's used Salesforce for 15 years. They've got leads that are 10 years old, and they do not want to do anything with these leads. I mean, we can mark them on cold and qualified. What's your advice as far as dealing with really old leads?
Yes, don't take away my things that are totally worthless to me, but I like to hoard data. I mean, storage cost considerations are eventually going to catch up with them. That might be a way to kind of introduce that conversation. I have no problem with leaving them in the org as long as you are marking them and as long as you do have good kind of deduplication processes in place. You could also probably implement some things to show these people change jobs all the time. Like, I'm 6 weeks in. I'm still a record in Salesforce 45 times from Conga and Pradley and PeerNova. So maybe that's a way, hey, these ones just they legitimately are non-addressable. Can we start to archive these or purge these out? I'm of the opinion I just burn it all down, but I get to make those decisions. Well, I'll stick around if anyone has stuff they don't want to broadcast their dirty laundry in front of the entire room. But thank you so much for being here and attending.